Hi, my name is Connor Esterwood, and today I'll be presenting Birds of a Feather, Flock Together. But do humans and robots? A meta-analysis of human and robot personality matching. This was a paper that I worked on along with Kyle Essemacher, Han Yang, Fanpeng Zhang, and Professor Lionel P. Robert. So, robots are becoming more and more prevalent, and they're projected to become even more so as time progresses and technology becomes more accessible. A major hurdle, however, revolves around the acceptance of these robots. Specifically, it is unclear if humans will accept robots. If they fail to do so, robots will ultimately underwhelm us and will fail to reach their ultimate potential. One important predictor of robot acceptance is the degree to which a robot's personality and a human's personality matches one another. So it appears that, at least within the literature, though, that there is a slight discrepancy here. There's mixed results. Some say that matching is better, some say that mismatching is better, while others say there's non-significant results. To date, no one has engaged in a systematic quantitative meta-analysis of these studies to empirically examine these relationships, which brings us to today's study and our primary objective. The goal of this study was to take stock of all that has been done so far and see where we stand in relation to the following question. Does personality similarity between humans and robots promote robot acceptance? To approach this question, we utilized a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is useful in this case as it can combine the information present in multiple studies, surpassing many of the limitations of any single study to estimate an overall relationship across studies. To accomplish this, however, we first needed to conduct a rather thorough review of the literature and pull all the papers that we could on the subject of human-robot personality similarity or dissimilarity and acceptance. To do this, we adopted a search strategy that relied on Google Scholar, the ACM Digital Library, and IEEE Explorer as our primary databases. Within these, we did a page-by-page search where we moved through pages progressively until a page of results failed to include any studies that met our initial criteria. These pages were recalled by using the specific search terms here, and these are also detailed in the paper. Generally, they were just different combinations of human-robot interaction, HRI, and personality. As far as our inclusion-exclusion criteria went, initially we really wanted to have papers that were classified as articles or other academic works. We wanted papers that were published in some form of English, and we wanted these papers to contain the terms robot and the term personality, either in their abstracts or their titles. Once this initial batch of papers was sort of gathered, they were processed through a 3-stage screening process. This was a progressively stricter process where we went through abstract and then full text screening. This is a little bit more visible in the paper, so I'll just kind of skip it for right now, and we can discuss it in the Q&A if you have any specific questions about the process. So after our search was completed, we identified 13 papers, sum total for our meta-analysis. These are listed here and in more detail in the paper. These met all of our inclusion-exclusion criteria and also had the relevant statistics for us to use in a meta-analysis. Another important thing to note is that we utilized a psychometric analytical tradition. So in meta-analysis, this is a method that takes into account error where it's reported. So reliabilities were incorporated where possible, and where they were not, they were imputed using the PsychMeta package in R. This package is kind of at the core of our analysis, and I highly recommend you check it out if you're interested in meta-analysis in general. We also utilized correlations rather than Cohen's d values. Next up, we'll move on to our results of this analysis. Returning to our initial question of does personality similarity between humans and robots promote robot acceptance. We found that there was a positive correlation across effect sizes, indicating that human-robot personality similarity does appear to be significantly and positively related to robot acceptance. One thing to note, however, is that moderators appear to be present based on our heterogeneity here. These moderators could vary, but we were bound by kind of what was reported and what was looked at. So what we had available to us was age ranges and gender diversity within samples. So moving on to the moderator of age, the relationship between human and robot personality similarity and robot acceptance was only significant within the 45 to 64-year-old age group. So looking at this overall effect, what we see is it being moderated by age in the case of 45 to 64-year-olds. Interestingly, no 65 and older subjects were included in any of these samples, or at least were not the majority of the subjects in the sample. Moving on to the moderator of gender diversity. Gender diversity was the degree to which studies favored either men or women. So we looked at this because it's become clear over multiple studies that within the technology acceptance literature, gender can be quite influential into determining the acceptance of different technologies. We figured that robots might be just one of those, and there is some evidence to support that as well. Results of this study, however, indicated that personality similarity and dissimilarity was only a predictor of robot acceptance in study samples with high and medium levels of gender diversity. So what that means is that our results indicated a positive correlation between having a high or medium gender diversity and robot acceptance. This supports the idea that samples with more diversity in terms of gender correlate with higher robot acceptance. One limitation here is that researchers only reported in two categories, male versus female, and no studies reported samples with low degrees of gender diversity, so we can't really speak to that data because it doesn't exist. So at the end of the day, what we saw was a handful of different research opportunities that have presented themselves and gaps kind of within this existing literature. First, there's a need to expand study samples. It would be good to investigate gender effects. So having samples that were majority female or majority male would be useful, as well as having different studies in locations other than Europe and the United States. There's a lack of sort of geographical diversity within these samples that might underscore or highlight cultural differences in how people interact with robots, not only in terms of personality similarity and dissimilarity, but also overall. In addition to these points, there's also gaps that exist around different types of tasks and work environments. It would be good to examine social context more specifically by looking at different types of tasks and different types of sort of workplace arrangements. In addition, different personality traits have different impacts across a variety of outcomes. The literature, as it presently stands, is really focused on extroversion and introversion, and doesn't necessarily look at any of the other big 5 personality traits. Although 2 studies in this review have examined group-level interactions, there's really a need for more research in that regard. Humans and robots are certain to have one-on-one interactions, but the majority of workplace arrangements are multiple individuals. Think about most retail labor, for example. It's a larger team of both humans and robots that might end up working together. So individual analysis is useful, but group-level analysis may also be worth the time and energy to invest in. So to sum things up, we saw that human-robot personality similarity was significantly correlated with acceptance of robots. And this was moderated by age, in the case of 45 to 64-year-olds, and gender diversity in the case where it was high or medium. We can move on to questions now. If you guys have any comments on the methodology utilized or are curious about meta-analysis, I'd love to talk about that. I'm also very open to different moderators that you think might be influential in determining when a similar or a different personality is going to lead to more acceptance or not. Thank you for your time.